Hello, everyone. I've decided to do my video on the full moon in Cancer slash lunar eclipse live. So for those of you on YouTube can, just have the live experience. I've also put the link up for those of you on Facebook to hop on over and see what's going on. So let's just give everyone a little bit of time before starting with this. So, now, basically, we're having a lunar eclipse today. Okay, and we've been going through the eclipse cycles. Those of you who pay attention to astrology, and you know that eclipse very powerful events. In terms of a build up and build down to an eclipse, it's like a one. Generally speaking, they say it's 1 week before the actual eclipse and 1 week after the actual eclipse has happened. So when you're looking back at the nature of an eclipse, look at what happened in the time period, the build up 1 week before and the build down or wind down 1 week later. Now, eclipses are also important because they link to other eclipses in 18-year cycles. And in between, I'm going to be acknowledging everyone on the live chat. So, good morning, everyone. Hello, Heyoka. Hello, smiley faces. Lots of love to all of you. And let's get back to it. And what we also see with the eclipse cycles is that they link to other eclipses in 18-year journeys. So, for example, this particular eclipse is part of lunar eclipse Saros cycle. That's what it's called, Saros, a Saros cycle 144. So this particular eclipse, in terms of universal time, the point of greatest eclipse intensity is 1911, so 7:11 p.m. universal time. You can use your time converters to figure out what that is for you. The prior issue or the prior Saros eclipse, lunar eclipse in this series happened December 30th, 2001. Before that, it was December 20th, 1983. Before that, it was December 8th, 1965. Before that, it was November 28th, 1947. Before that, November 17th, 1929. So all of these are really, really, these are events that happen. Which, to understand the full impact of the eclipse, you've got to look back at these events historically and to see what's happening in the larger world. We're not doing that today, but for those of you who are interested, go back and do some, sleuthing into history. What happened in 1929? What were we doing in 1947? And so on and so forth. And you can actually see major historical changes aligned with this. In terms of real time, and hello to everyone who's also joined the live chat. Hi. In terms of real time, for me, the biggest collective, what's the word? The biggest collective manifestation of this eclipse, is what's happening with the British royal family. And I know, and I'm not a royalist, though I do follow that institution in terms of how it has changed the structure of power over centuries for this planet. But for those of you who are not following it, well, basically, Prince Harry and Princess Markle have decided that they are no longer going to be senior royals, and they want to kind of bilocate between the US and England, and they want to be financially independent. As Piers Morgan said, never thought I'd be using that line, but as Piers Morgan, a famous personality and commentator in the UK, said, they're basically disowning the royal family. And I was reading what the BBC had to say about it, and this is an unprecedented move. Am I surprised about it? No, because she is of mixed race herself, but she is basically the first person of Afro Caribbean heritage to ever be a part of that family. And so people are already thinking, okay, this is going to create some kind of conflict. And so it has, though for different reasons. So, with this sudden announcement where they didn't exactly consult, apparently, it's certainly left a lot of people very shocked. But it's also shown quite definitively that they've made a decision to break away from the old circle and old structure of power. And that's exactly what this eclipse is about. So, of course, there are other things going on the planet, but this is a good example to see what's happening. So, there's a lot of astrology out there that tells you this is about family, this is about home, this is about connection, and that's not wrong. But as we are all moving into, more refined spiritual existences, you've got to understand that family in this sense does not necessarily mean your direct blood or your direct lineage. It actually means the people, the individuals, the institutions that you actually resonate with, things that you choose to associate and identify yourself with. So this is more towards family of choice. At the very least, that's very much how I've personally interpreted this alignment as well. Very often the way culture, the way society teaches us, especially in Asian cultures, we're taught to see the family unit as immutable, as sacred, as, something you just can't handle, or rather you can't change. And so whatever karma you get from it is, your lot in life. And that's one way of looking at it. But as more and more people step into a different relationship with spirituality, we see that inheriting family karma and carrying it for the rest of our lives is actually, well, now it's become more of an option as opposed to something that a prison sentence that you are actually born into. And that's one of the liberating potentials of the lunar eclipse in Cancer. But to be able to handle this energy in a way that doesn't cause an emotional breakdown, or being absolutely overwhelmed and flooding with tears and emotions, and feeling disconnected or whatever, you first have to start with grounding in yourself. And that's where we look at the fact that the lunar eclipse is opposed Capricorn. So with the Sun in Capricorn, Mercury in Capricorn, Ceres in Capricorn. We also see Pluto in Capricorn. We see Saturn in Capricorn. We see the major Capricorn conjunction waiting for us on January the 12th and the 13th, depending on where you are in the world, that might differ slightly. So if you have been looking to, first of all, address the question of who are you as a soul, what is your true family here? What are you doing on this planet? If you are looking for those questions out there in a time of intense planetary crisis, you have to first come back to your answers in yourself. Do you have the right grounding? Have you, as an individual soul, done the best to your ability to find grounding in yourself and to assume personal responsibility for what is yours to assume? And honestly, that is a frightening idea for a lot of people because society has conditioned us and it has romanticized the idea of dependence, whether it's within families, whether it's within relationships, whether it's even within the workplace. There is a certain hierarchy and a certain dependency that we have been told is normal. And this, to be honest, is a deviance from the actual spiritual journey. If you were to look at in older times, what did spiritual teachers do? What did the greatest mystics and seers do? With very few exceptions, they mostly sat somewhere in a forest and sat and continued and focused on their practice. That's a very solitary path. I'm not saying we all need to go back towards that, but if we were to look at the way spirituality evolved over the ages, we've been trying to fit it into society's understandings of what's niceness and what's comfortable and the way we want to organize society, and in each individual's hierarchical relationship to others. It's in some ways there's always been a kind of an attempt to make spirituality a little bit more palatable. But at the end of the day, it comes back to ourselves and our innermost relationship with spirit. And from that bedrock, from that foundation, are we actually then able to manage communities, relationships, families, workplace connections with the integrity that is required of this time? And that's what's happening. And I'm just using the example of the royal family just as one example, but because it's the most visible example right now. But this will be happening in its own way across the planet. We are going to be looking at unjust, inequitable, patriarchal, traditional dynamics within the family unit itself, and people are going to be breaking out of it. And they're not going to be nice about it. Because the time for niceness, I would say, in this area has passed. We've had a couple of years to give people the opportunity to, amend their behaviors or kind of correct the do a little bit of course correction on their own spiritual paths and journeys. And by this point, already at the start of 2020, we see that really there's no more room for that. People have had a buildup of years working towards this particular year as a whole. And what people are is what people are. It's what they are. what they've chosen to be. So many who are in dysfunctional family dynamics in particular will be wanting to break out of this, especially because this particular full moon is also aspecting Eris. Eris is in mythology. Long story short, you may have heard of me speak of her before. Eris basically is the goddess of chaos and discord, and she and her kids do not get invited to a wedding. And because she's excluded, she ends up throwing down the golden apple of discord that basically then leads to the Trojan War, which then leads to a whole lot of death because she's not invited to a wedding. There's a lot, I mean, whilst exclusion in itself is not a right thing to do, there is a level of overkill and disproportional reaction that also comes with Eris. And this is also something people are needing to manage at this time, especially if they are struggling as an individual in dysfunctional family dynamics. And I know that a lot of you actually benefit from the literature that is available in this area. So, some of you may want to look up codependency. If people, have those kinds of relationship dynamics, it's not enough to read what you find on the internet and in chat forums. It really helps to get a counselor or a therapist or someone who is qualified to help you through it. But a really, really good book would be Why Women Love Too Much by Robin Norwood. That really opens your mind to understand a lot of these dynamics. For those of you who are the black sheep of negative family dynamics and you're wondering why everything is so weird, look up a concept called the narcissistic family tree. It will save your life. It will absolutely give you an understanding of how dysfunctional family dynamics get propagated amongst different family members, how different people are put into certain roles, and what happens when someone tries to stir the pot. And that is why, understandably, a lot of people are breaking out of these dynamics with less grace and more self assertion now. Hopefully, they don't go into the overkill mode, which would be a bit too much, which is what Eris squaring this full moon and sun also bring the possibility of. Now, what's also very interesting is that for people who have already been doing their work, this full moon is not a biggie. See, the eclipses require a kind of a karmic, what you might call it, a karmic hook or a karmic handle. And in fact, astrology works that way, generally speaking. If you have been doing your work to purge karmic contracts that no longer function, to no longer take responsibility in ways that are beyond your soul's autonomous choices, to no longer be gaslit or scapegoated or confined in a certain role just to keep other people happy, the more you actually step into the truth of yourself, the less hold karma has on you. And so people who have been doing this work are also, some of you are also going to be feeling, well, I don't feel the drama, I don't feel the trauma, I'm okay, I've been doing my work, and that is also perfectly fine. And if you are in that sweet spot, enjoy it, stick to your truth, stick to your emotions, and nurture yourself. And if you can, nurture somebody else as long as it doesn't become into a parasitic dependent contract, because that's also very likely at this time. So, really, what we are seeing is the need to look at how our choices of autonomy result in choices that have to do with who and what we consider as our true family, what we understand as our true home. For some of you, that question of home is a place, a person, yourself. For some of you, home is a state of mind. For some of you, home is a food. For different people, you'll find different answers. The only thing that I can really tell you, given how incredible this time is right now and the major Capricorn conjunction just at our doorstep, the most important thing to take home from this alignment, no pun intended, is home. What is home for you? What is emotional truth for you? And that's the key. That is the key to unlocking this puzzle. People who have been making the necessary cuts where required, I can understand how difficult that is. It can sometimes feel like a very, very lonely process, but that's when you sometimes find your true self. People who have been buried even more so under the weight of dysfunctional family dynamics, this is the time for you to unearth yourself. This is the time for you to allow yourself to actually see what is real for you and what is truth for you. Now, this doesn't just apply to the family home, it also refers to the human family at a much larger collective level. And there are some members of this human family that see fit to use and abuse others. So how are you going to respond to them? If the micro level dynamics do not apply to you immediately, look at how this is happening and playing out for us at the macro level. And remember, the energy of this eclipse will still continue to have effect 1 week from now. So there's still more to come. One of the interesting things, because I really hunted for this one, I really, really, really hunted. And I was looking at how do you find an answer to some of the major functions, some of the major aspects of this eclipse. Now, I can see some of you are writing wholeness and family, but truthfully, it is not family that makes us whole, it is ourselves that make us whole. And some people are born into families that can support them, others are born into parasitic shitholes. Let's not beat around the bush. For people in that situation, actually having the freedom to say, I can find a place that nurtures me by myself, is what they need to find liberation. And for those of you who are fortunate enough to have great family, wonderful. Be happy with that, use that energy of support, and maybe share it in your community as well. But there is no one definition for this, because every soul is an individual soul on an individual journey. I mean, truthfully, I find it harder to speak on astrology these days because every soul is just at such a different place. Some people are still very much in the 3D. Some people are moving to the 5D. And at the 5D level, astrology is it's different. Talking about it is different. Doing it is different. It's not the same thing. But wherever you are and whatever you are doing, go to what makes you feel whole. Sometimes it's family, and sometimes it's realizing that family starts with you and starting the whole process all over again with people who are aligned with you. Um, I don't know about it all has a purpose. I do not. I'm looking at the comments. I personally am not someone who romanticizes negative karma. And I do feel that purpose is simply a way to justify bad choices. And yeah, because you can actually justify a lot of cruelty, a lot of violence in the world by saying it served a purpose. If we are truly moving to 5D, we cannot use that language anymore. Because if we are actually stepping into ourselves as autonomous co creators with spirit, we choose the experiences that we endure. But then again, everybody is different. I cannot speak to your truths, but when I see another truth coming into my space, I have to speak to it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be speaking here. But you got to come to your own realizations and decisions on that, because what works for you is what works for you. So, what I would also say in terms of the astrology of it, there is a very interesting asteroid that is in conjunct the sun. And it's a body called Asbolus, Asbolus. That's at 20 degrees Gemini. So Asbolus's energy is very much the energy of divination, sight. Basically, he was a centaur who read omens through the flight of the birds. This is the kind of energy which allows you to get a certain insight that helps you see the larger picture. So that's the beauty of Gemini, because, like I said, this is at 20 degrees Gemini. The beauty of it is somewhere, especially when you're not really looking, you get a certain message that helps you get a little piece that fits, that makes the whole puzzle whole, so to speak. And whatever it is, pay attention to what information is coming your way, especially if you are seeking an answer. If you already know you got an answer, I don't know why you're listening to this. But if you're looking for an answer, pay attention to the information that comes your way. And you will find, if you are open to it, you will actually be able to see the writing of the wall. For those of you who are struggling with dysfunctional family dynamics and are wondering whether you've separated or whether you're still in that situation, if you're looking for the missing piece of the puzzle, look to events that happened, especially between the age of 0 to 9. You may want to have a talk with your siblings. You may want to have a talk with people who are around. And this is especially true for people who have suppressed a lot of their memories. And that happens a lot in cases of trauma and abuse and narcissistic family constellations. So, this is also an alignment that can certainly bring and unearth a lot of truths to the surface. Ultimately, choose and be where you feel stable, grounded, and where you feel surrounded by those who actually give you support. That is the key message that I would say I would be able to share with everyone, and everyone will interpret it. Everyone will go and find and seek that kind of solidity for themselves in different ways. The one thing I would say is do not be so desperate to find family in people who do not have your back just because you want that idea of feeling like you have a home, you are loved, you belong somewhere. Sometimes we are so desperate to have that idea fulfilled that we allow people into our space that do not actually mean us well. And this is where we really need to be willing to remove the blinders. It is so easy for humanity to try and twist and turn itself to fulfill ideational concepts and thought forms that have a certain weight and a certain meaning to them. It is so easy for humanity to try and just filter out information that does not fit what it wants to see. And this year is entirely about truth, truth, and truth. This is not a year where we can afford to lie to ourselves. And if we have not been lying to ourselves, we would not be in this collective situation. So, for me, I'm a Capricorn. I look at results. If all of us collectively were doing the work that we needed to be doing, if we were not lying to ourselves or romanticizing dysfunction, we would be living in a very, very, very different world. Here's another tip for a really good book that might also open a lot of eyes. It's called Why People Don't Heal and How They Can by a woman called Carolyn Miss. And so there's three books that I've recommended. And honestly, to get real with you, it gives you enough concepts that you need. It gives you the kind of concepts that you need to really get the blinders off by yourself. Not to say that you shouldn't have help. One is Women Who Love Too Much by Robin Norwood. One is Why People Don't Heal and How They Can by Carolyn Miss. And I told you guys a third book. Oh God, I forgot it now. What was the third book? Oh no, the third wasn't a book, it was a concept. Look up narcissistic family dynamics and you learn about the scapegoat, the golden child, and so on and so forth. I mean, at a spiritual level, at a spiritual perspective, especially with Ceres so close to Pluto, so close to Saturn in Capricorn, especially with the full moon in Cancer, it's very tempting to kind of put this entire, energy under the rubric of the feminine. But what people forget is that the feminine can be equally toxic, and this is what people don't want to talk about. It's very easy talking about a toxic patriarchy and a toxic masculine because we see that so often. But what we also forget is that there is toxicity within feminine energy itself. And for people who are seeking to connect with that purer divine essence, you got to understand that it's not about male, female, yin yang. It's about your spiritual purity and clarity, irrespective of what body you were born in. And for me, as a spiritualist, the biggest message is not to romanticize. Stay clear. Look at events not as the way you want to see them, not in the ways you want to disguise them or put a label on them because it makes you more comfortable, but be willing to actually see them for what they are, not what you need them to be. And that's one of the core, I would say, sub themes coming through this particular full moon. I mean, there's also a whole bunch of stuff aspecting the galactic center, and I do cover this a lot more in my Tier 23 series. This is the kind of energy that absolutely asks you to look back at those karmic contracts that deal with different aspects of the feminine. I'll just give you a quick list. The galactic center at this time, which is at 27 degrees Sagittarius right now, is sextile Venus, 26 degrees Aquarius. It's sextile Haumea, the energy of the earth, 27 degrees Libra. It's sextile Okiro, a woman who had her prophetic gift taken away from her, 27 degrees Aquarius. It is conjunct Pallas Athena, who has often been linked with the energy of transgender people, people who are LGBT plus, She's certainly also been linked with the vibration of the feminine, especially as the feminine has been co opted as part of a toxic patriarchy. If you look at the myth of Pallas Athena and how she's been very, very harsh to other women, especially, you can see where that comes in. So it's really a question of femininity and how femininity can actually be used for a positive or negative. The galactic center also sextiles Circe, yet another feminine form that abused her energies, 27 degrees Aquarius. It is opposite Minerva, another form of Pallas at 26 Gemini. It is squared Nemesis, an ancient Greek goddess that balanced karma in a very powerful way. 26 degrees Virgo and trine Aphrodite, 26 degrees Aries. It has a lot of feminine archetypes circling all over the place. And the reason why I bring this up, and I know it's a bit different from the vibration of a Cancer Capricorn discussion, is because I feel that there's actually more energy and more traction, for me at the very least, when we look at these connections to the galactic center. As we are able to recognize the roles that we have been forced into. Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, whether you identify differently, there are certain structures or roles that people have kind of been squished into to get them to play out a particular karmic role or contract. And this is a time where we can actually petition to higher powers, to beings that we believe in. In your own tradition, you can do it in your own way to actually dissolve the need for these roles. Because the moment there's a role, there's also a desire to fit into it. And we see that in family, in government, in the way things collectively play out. But effectively, this is also a very powerful time for us to come back to the feminine. It is a time for us to actually come back to the feminine in a way that is beyond these definitions, that is beyond the needs to fulfill and go into certain roles here and there. And in fact, the fact that the eclipse, rather the sun, is also going to be conjuncting Cassandra. So, in other words, the full moon is going to be opposing Cassandra at 19 Capricorn, is also a time where we need to speak truth. Just truth. Get out of the roles. Get out of the constructs. Get out of the scripts that tell you that this is home, this is family, this is who you are, this is what you do. Get out of all of that stuff that hasn't served our world, not for a long time. And the more you actually get your head out of those roles, the more you actually step into greater freedom, greater truth, greater power, greater whatever. The last but not least, I do also want to talk about the fact that, I mean, there are other things that are aspecting this moon. The moon is also going to be squaring Juno at 19 degrees Libra, and also an asteroid known as Hebe at 20 degrees Libra. Hebe or Hebe, I don't know how to say it. Juno is very much the energy of the soulmate or soul contact, but as I remind my clients, soulmates can be your child, your brother, your sister, your cat, your neighbor. It doesn't have to be something absolutely romantic, marital, or sexual. So this is an energy that also very strongly aspects this eclipse. Be very wary into trying to jump into relationships just for the sake of fitting into those roles and into those boxes, because that's not going to work. If you are connecting with someone right now, if you are wanting to make a new family with someone right now, do it because you feel it, not because you think you have to. Because a lot of our screw ups happen when we start trying to follow a script than our actual being. Hebe's energy at 20 degrees Libra is a bit more complicated. It is the energy that deals with, well, she used to be the cupbearer of the gods. And she got kicked out because she got into an inappropriate relationship with someone who was a lot older than her. Hebe's energy at this time can also show us a lot of secrets and a lot of abuses that are coming out, especially as people speak about relationship violations or things that happen, especially between different generations. So, people with large age gaps. I know that's oddly specific, but some of these very, very specific alignments come out and come to life if you have something in your chart that's hitting 20 degrees Libra. But either way, it's a very important time to not take on board new karmic contracts just so you can tick off those boxes. I have this, I have that, I have that. That's not spirit, that's the mind. Go with the energy of spirit. Don't go with the script that society has given you that you need to fulfill and obey, because that shit has not worked for a very long time. But I would say, yeah, that's probably it. I'd say there's obviously more to talk about in terms of the major Capricorn conjunction, but I think this should give you kind of the energy of how to how to move through some of the kinds of opposition we might get. As long as you feel grounded in yourself, you will more likely than not find what you need in the right way that you need it. It's not about a competition. It's not about that person has this and this person has that, because what's real, raw, and true and grounding for each person is different. And like I said, the more you know, the less certain you can actually, I just find it incredible that people have been in this field for a very long time make the kinds of statements that they do. Because I just find it harder and harder and harder to make these kinds of videos or make these kinds of statements, because I look at every soul as absolutely unique. Everyone has their own story. So at best, astrology can just give you some trends. Focus on yourself, work on your lower three chakras. Some of you are asking questions of how do you begin grounding and so on and so forth. Honestly, Google is your friend. There's a lot of free resources online. There's a lot of people who have been working on this journey, but those books and those recommendations that I gave you, start with that and you will liberate yourself in a very powerful way. I'd say that's about it. Take care. Very many blessings. Lots of love to everybody. Ciao, ciao for now. Bye.